All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's another Saturday. It's another MLB strategy show. It's your old pal EMac, joined by Greg Ehrenberg. Greg, we've got the two of us. We're starting the day off. We each have additional shows going on. We've got a show coming up here at noon for the NFL preseason. We've got a 3 o'clock MMA live before lock that is going to be with Pete the Heat Rogers and third leg Greg. You may be familiar with him. And then we've got 6 o'clock. We've got the MLB live before lock. I'm going to be on that show with Terry McBride because Gundacker turned into Sundacker. Apparently he walked outdoors in daylight to get the mail and got sun poisoning. At least that's the story I'm telling on his behalf. But he's down for the count at the moment. And Greg, what else do we have? It's been like a whole week since we've talked, or maybe it's been two. I've lost track these days.
No, we saw each other last night in between shows. You messaged me on Slack, so we've been in. Yeah, we've.
But I'm old school. I think of talking one-on-one. That's like seeing somebody, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna go that far, then it's been since the company meetup in Chicago that we've actually seen each other. But yeah, we've got a baseball slate today, 12 games, two shows in a row I have to do where we're just really quick jamming everything in because we've got more sports going on now, like NFL and MMA today as well. So last night, Josh and I ended up having 55 minutes to break down like 14 baseball games, and more or less the same for you and I this afternoon.
Yep. So we will get on with this. We will cover the main slate, and then we'll briefly touch on the three earlier games. We do have content available for that. My Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article should be posted in the next 20 minutes or so. That will give you some options for those early games as well as the late slate and along with the main slate. But let's jump on in here. We're brought to you by PrizePicks. We'll talk about them, but remember, if you use the promo code AWESEMO, yes, AWESEMO, with your first deposit, you will get a deposit match up to $100. Those funds come out of your account first. You don't have to do anything special. And then you also get 30 free days of Stokastic premium content by using the promo code AWESEMO. All right, Greg, we've got an interesting game here. We have I believe it's the Washington Nationals, or what's left of them, hosting the San Diego Padres. We have Anibal Sanchez on the mound. On the other side, we have Yu Darvish. I have decided that the Nationals are going to get no hit between now and the end of the year. Darvish, I think, is one of the pitchers on the short list that I can think do it. He's going against the venerable, the 38-year-old Anibal Sanchez. Anibal Sanchez has been in the league long enough to have thrown a no-hitter while pitching for the Florida Marlins in a game in Dolphin Stadium. That all seems pretty bizarre. None of those things are the same anymore. Not only did he have Mike Stanton as a teammate, he also played against the other Mike Stanton, the original Mike Stanton, and he's played against both Fernando Tatis Sr. and Fernando Tatis Jr. He's given up 8 home runs in his 25 innings this season. He's throwing batting practice, except it's going to be during a game. What do you want to do with this matchup? It's probably only San Diego. Take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, San Diego, from both pitching and a hitting aspect, I like Yu Darvish as a pitcher. I think he's going under-owned, and I think as an offense, I think the Padres are going under-owned, and it's kind of the same numbers we had on them yesterday in our top stacks tool. 8% ownership, 10% chance to be a top stack. Once again, I think this is a team to be overweight to. I know there's a little bit of drama going on with them right now with everything involving Fernando Tatis. I actually think the team's known about this for quite a while. If you read the press release from baseball, it said that Tatis dropped his appeal, and that's why the suspension was in action now. And because of the privacy restrictions in between the agreement between the Players Association and the MLB is not allowed to announce any kind of steroid suspensions until all of the details are finalized. So I'm actually not sure the Padres would have gone out and traded for Juan Soto and Josh Bell if it wasn't for the Tatis situation. I think they've known about this for quite a while. They knew he was appealing it. And then once it got to a point where he was like, I'm not fighting this anymore, it became public. So when it comes to the team, I think it's been in the mix. I don't really think the drama is going to affect them that significantly. They were great yesterday. Sanchez has been terrible this year. So I think that he's a pitcher to pick on. And then also just standpoint of, we don't have that much ownership going to the Padres because everybody in the world is stacking the Arizona Diamondbacks against Jose Urania today. So we'll talk about that Coors Field game later, but because that team is so highly owned right now, we have a whole lot of other good offenses that look they're going under on. The Padres are one of them. And then as for Yu Darvish as a pitcher going up against your Washington Nationals, EMac, it's a bad offense without Juan Soto and Josh Bell. And there just isn't really any kind of real substantial offense that they have going up against opposing pitchers. There's a point in time where it was like, hey, as long as pitchers could pitch around Juan Soto and Josh Bell, they're going to do well against this lineup. And now they don't even have that in the mix anymore. And one other positive point to bring up about Yu Darvish, I was really concerned about his strikeout rate earlier in the year. It has gotten considerably better as the season's gone on. So first half of the year, 23% K rate for Darvish, 30.8% in the second half of the year. I think we could attribute this to a couple of things. Most notably, I think the MLB has gotten very lax on the sticky substance stuff. And a lot of pitchers that weren't using it earlier realized like, oh, we could use it now. And it's kind of on the up and up. It's cool. I think that's something that's really benefited Yu Darvish as well as a number of other pitchers. Big strikeout increase. He's not all that popular today. I think at 13% on DK, he's one of the better GPP pitchers. And a lot of people are going to be flocking to Jacob deGrom and Lucas Giolito today. Over on FanDuel, we could get Darvish for only 8% ownership. Also a number I like being overweight to in large field tournaments.
Yep. And then just to add on to Darvish before we get to the next game, well, you mentioned the strikeout rate is up, still the lowest of his career, but his efficiency is at some of the best of his career. He has 17 quality starts, which is tied for the second most in the league. So it does seem like things are definitely trending up for him. This looks like a good spot. And you want to keep in mind that the quality start is an important scoring stat on FanDuel. So you want to remember that. It also counts, I believe, towards the pitching on PrizePicks. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Next game that we have, and some of these games we'll be able to zip on through. We've got the Detroit Tigers going into Chicago, taking on the White Sox. You've got Lucas Giolito is having the worst season of this season has been worse than what he's done over the last 3 years. His strikeouts are still there. If he had enough strikeouts or enough innings to qualify, he would rank inside the top 10 with his 10.3 strikeouts per nine. He's going against the Detroit Tigers, who we've talked about how dreadfully bad they are against right-handed pitching. Their active roster WRC plus is currently 68. That means they are creating runs 32% less efficiently than league average against righties, and weighted runs created plus, it's an advanced metric that neutralizes ballpark factors and a few other things to create that baseline. The next worst team is Cincinnati, and they're at 78. So this is just an epically bad team. Their isolated power is 105. That's kind of like, well, not quite Jacob deGrom and Steven Strasburg when they were hitting, but not much better than that. So I really think we're going to want to go to Giolito here. Is there anything redeeming about anybody on Detroit?
No, the team is terrible. It's been really bad all year, but now especially so. We saw Michael Kopech crush against them yesterday, and Kopech's not been great this year, especially from a strikeout perspective. He had only had, I think it was like one start with over 6 strikeouts in the last 2.5 months, and had no problem racking up strikeouts last night. And we look at Giolito, he's really struggled this year, but one thing he has done is he has still found ways to generate strikeouts. So 4.91 ERA and a 4.38 expected ERA are very disappointing relative to expectations for Giolito coming into the year. I don't remember exactly, but he either had like the 3rd or 4th best AL Cy Young odds opening up the season, and he's been very far removed from that pitcher, but 26% K rate, he still generates swing and misses. I think he's a considerably better pitcher, at least than Michael Kopech from a strikeout perspective. We saw what he did against the Tigers last night. So Giolito's cheap. There's clearly a lot of upside there. The field is getting to him a ton. For cash games, he's kind of a no-brainer looking at the ownership. I know a lot of people don't like Giolito and feel uncomfortable with him, but it's the Tigers on the other side. So in cash games on DK, I think we're pretty clearly going to deGrom and Giolito as our pitching options. Over on FanDuel, it's either going to be deGrom or Giolito. I still feel better about deGrom just because I think he's considerably better than Giolito, and deGrom looks as unhittable as ever. But Giolito is the best salary saving option on the slate at pitcher.
All right. How are you feeling about the White Sox offense here going into this matchup? There's a lot of good offensive spots. This actually falls down the list despite it being one of the better matchups going against Matt Manning. We've got a couple more injuries there for the White Sox. You've got the slumping Yasmani Grandal. We've got Timmy Anderson is out, so now they're relying heavily on Gavin Sheets. You're seeing Harris kind of take over leadoff duties in some matchups here. It's a bit of a mess there. Anything redeeming for the White Sox?
No, I just think there's better offenses to get to. And something also of note here is that Matt Manning has kind of looked decent this year. He was one of the top prospects in baseball prior to last year. He got called up to the big leagues and just really sucked. He wasn't ready yet. He ended up with a 5.8 ERA, 5.44 expected ERA last year. This season in AAA, he was pretty solid, 2.66 ERA, 2.83 FIP. And then since getting called up to the big leagues this year, he's only made 4 starts, but he's a 2.25 ERA and a 3.92 expected ERA. So I think he's been pretty serviceable. And then we've got a White Sox team on the other side that's just always banged up. This team is never healthy. I don't know what the deal is with their training staff, but they can't keep guys on the field. And I just think that the matchup against Matt Manning is probably a little more difficult than most people realize. They're picking up 3% ownership. We have them projected for 4% top stack odds. So if you're multi-entering today, I think they would be a team to have potentially in the player pool. But if you're hand building a handful of lineups or playing 20 max and 20 entry or something like that, it wouldn't be part of my portfolio.
All right. You know what should be part of everybody's portfolio? Hitting the like button. It does help us out here. We'd love to see that get up to around, where are we now? 34. Let's get up to 50. That would be nice. We've got about 170 of you watching. We've got some free content. I'm going to drop the link to the Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks article. That is my article, and it is free every single day on the homepage there. That is hot off of the presses. And then I just closed my run sheet. So we'll talk about, let's see, I'm going to guess the next game is probably the Atlanta and Miami game. I'm not entirely sure who is going to pitch for Atlanta. Ian Anderson's going to be called up from the minors because this is a doubleheader today. They do get the extra pitcher as part of the MLB rules. I suspect he'll come up and pitch today and then get Das Boot back down to the minors. Afterwards, he's been in the midst of a dreadful season. If we get to go against him, you've got, I don't know, some cheap Miami Marlins here. He's been struggling, but do we really need to go to the Marlins with so many other mispricings on both sites?
Not at all. Like pricing doesn't exist anymore. My single entry lineup on DraftKings last night ended up being a 5-man Dodger stack with Carlos Rodon and Max Scherzer as my pitchers. Like what does pricing matter? Because then you just have 3 guys that I used as plugins that were all like $2,000 that projected decently well for us. So it's really unnecessary to play some of these cheap offenses, even if it does look like, oh, look, this offense is a good value. I just don't really know at this point what we need that value for, because we've got Jacob deGrom today, who's, he's $10,800 on FanDuel. He's $10,600 on DraftKings. Giolito, great SP2 option. He's $7,500. The pricing is so screwed up that I just haven't found the need to play some of these cheap offenses that look like good points per dollar options, because I don't, what am I spending up for them? I'm just leaving a bunch of salary on the table. I don't think it's necessary for a slate of this size.
No, and I agree. And yesterday, one of my, I wrote up Austin Voth as an intriguing discount pitcher. There were so many cheap bats. I literally got 1% of them. The only reason I ended up with him in my lineups is I made sure I had some, because I always like to play the players I write up, and he ended up having a good night, even better than expected. Baltimore did well, but the grand scheme of things, it didn't matter. We didn't need it at all. And I feel like that's the way things are shaping up tonight. So this game's kind of a bit of a, do you feel Matt Olson seemingly, somehow he still doesn't have 30. I don't think he has 30 home runs yet, but it feels like he hits one every other day. You've got Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson, William Contreras, some intriguing options here. Anybody you want to go to or call out in particular with this game being in Marlins Park, likely with the roof closed? It's going to be a little rainy today in Miami.
Yeah, so it's a little hard to know right now because we don't have Vegas data yet for the game, which is going to happen when the pitchers aren't confirmed and all of that. There's no betting line for the game. So as a result, we don't have all the data updated in our tool. So it throws off all the top stacks tool for the individual teams in this game. So we don't have a lot of ownership projected to go to Atlanta right now, nor very high top stack odds, but that could change based on what the betting line opens up at. Nick Neidert's actually pitched extremely well in AAA this year, 1.96 ERA, 3.86 FIP. And he's not somebody that's really considered a prospect or anything like that by any means. But this is a pitcher-friendly park. So unless Atlanta goes like crazy low-owned, it's probably not a team that I'm really dying to get to, mostly just because of the park factors. And then also that there's a lot of offenses on this slate that I really do like to get to that I think are under-owned. One of them being the Padres that we started by talking about.
All right, let's get on to our next game. We're now up to 215 people. Let's get us up to 75 likes, and I will ban Sean B, who is in chat. I will put him in the virtual timeout just because I can. but I'm going to need a few extra likes to get that to be in play. Hi, Sean. We miss you when you're not on the chat for us. The Dodgers, excellent offensive environment tonight in Kansas City, going to be close to 100 degrees at the start of the game. We've got an 8 to 12 mile an hour wind going out to center field, and we have bad Brad Keller on the mound. Once upon a time, Brad Keller did an excellent job of limiting extra base hits. Not quite as good as he once was. He's changed his pitch mix a little bit and trying to go more for strikeouts, but that is not going to matter against the Dodgers because they have a 6 implied run total. I think pretty much everybody is in play for the Dodgers. Just say no to Keller and Andrew Heaney, 9,600. Even with our limited or our unlimited salary, that still feels like not a great price for Heaney on DraftKings. What do you want to do with this game, and why is it stacked the Dodgers?
Yeah, so the reason it's stacked the Dodgers, kind of the same reason I ended up landing on them for single entry last night, is it's a pretty solid spot for them. Last night, they were going up against Daniel Lynch was the starting pitcher, and he actually pitched fairly well, but it ultimately didn't matter. The Dodgers got into the bullpen, ended up scoring a whole bunch of runs against the Kansas City Royals, so that stack ended up working out for me. And really similar numbers in the top stacks to today that we had yesterday, really similar to the Padres. They were two of my favorite stacks yesterday. My lineups are going to look really similar today to what they did yesterday. Like the Padres and the Dodgers, I think are my two favorite stacks. I like the Yankees again as a lesser owned stack, but the Dodgers, 8% top, 12% top stack odds, second highest on the slate, and only 8% ownership. So we're getting positive leverage there. And we've got a really cheap SP2 option that you and I both like today in Lucas Giolito. I know the entire field does as well, but the Dodgers aren't all that popular. Everybody's playing the Diamondbacks today. So any other offense we're playing is somewhat contrarian just from that standpoint. Brad Keller this year hasn't been terrible, but he only has a 15.7% K rate. And it's always problematic, in my opinion, when a pitcher is a really low strikeout rate going up against a really potent offense, because you're just asking for trouble if you're allowing this Dodgers team to put the bat on the ball. So their implied team total is over 6 runs, and they're still not picking up ownership because, once again, everybody's playing the Diamondbacks and nearly 7 implied run total. So the ownership's going to stay this low on the Dodgers. The only real question I think I'm going to have once I get to building my lineups is, are the Padres or the Dodgers the team that I want to prioritize more? Because both of them look really good right now.
All right, free content today. The MLB night slates on DraftKings are completely free. That is all tools for MLB DK night slate. There are 2 games tonight, but you can look at all of the different tools, the top stacks, top pitchers, the projections, etc. All of the tools are free for the late game. So let's hit that like button and thank everybody that is hooking that up for you. We also have preseason football. There's going to be NFL Live Before Lock at noon today. That is going to be with Matt Gajeski and Neil the Real Deal Orfield. They also have a little promo code that they're going to tell you about. I'm going to tell you about it too. It is TUA, as in Tua Tagovailoa, TUA. Use that at checkout and get all of the preseason projections for just $5.
Oh, by the way, speaking of that, did you see the super chat we got earlier?
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, so we had a super chat. I just thought this was a good time to bring it up. I was waiting for you to mention the Tua read in the preseason show because Cyber Real Estate left us a super chat. Peace, love, and happiness. What is the new NFT on DraftKings, and what impact will it have on fantasy sports? Are you playing at all, the Rainmakers over on DraftKings, or are you aware of it?
I'm aware of it. I was going to ask you if you wanted me to give you any of my stuff because I don't quite understand what it is. I even took part in a focus group telling them they need to do a better job of explaining them. I'm inferring what I think they're doing, but there were a lot of holes in this, and it feels like there's not much of a roadmap into how they're going to finish it for this season. But yes, I am. You can get a free card over there by opting in to, I forget why I got a free card and then I got a free pack. So I ended up with Patrick Mahomes, like of one of 350. So I figured that was probably good. And then the rest of the filler cards in the other pack were just, are you doing it? I'm sure you are. Adam said he spent $20,000+ on players already.
Yeah, oh my God, I spent a whole night at a strip club on fantasy football cards. So Which, by the way, it's more or less what Adam spends when he goes to the strip club, for people who are not aware. The last time, I don't even, whatever. I don't even know if he'd want me to tell the story. If we still,
I'll tell the story. He dropped $15,000 at a strip club about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was the day before we met up in Chicago. We were like, "What'd you do?" He's like, "I was at a strip club last night until 5 a.m. So I had to push my flight back. I spent $15,000." But anyway, yeah, he got the private room. He was drunk and had, I guess, like the entire team. And then at the end of the night, do you know the James Harden story? There was one night he dropped $1 million in cash at a strip club, and then at the end of the night, they retired his jersey and hung it up in the rafters at the strip club, which is the funniest story ever. So that's Adam's goal in life. But we have a super chat here to answer from Cyber Real Estate, and the honest answer is we don't have all the information on it. I'm going to be playing it. Lofty and I are considering doing content for it under the idea of, we're not going to say that we're experts on the matter, because I don't know how anybody could say that they're experts on the new DraftKings NFT fantasy game, because it hasn't started yet. We haven't seen contests. They haven't released all the information on it. The short version of it is you're getting football cards in packs. You could buy, sell, and trade them on the secondary market, and you build DFS lineups out of them, and then you play in contests with them. And I know that they've said at least there's going to be at least $1 million in prize pools every single week for this season over on DraftKings. So there's still more information to come out about it, but that's like the summarized version of it, is that there's cards that you open up in packs, you build lineups with them in the same way you would with DFS, but you don't pay entry fees for contests. You just, if you have the cards and you could build lineups with them, that's how you enter contests. And I think the way that Lofty and I, if we do content with it, we're just going to talk through it and answer some people's questions. And we'll try to figure out strategies with you guys on the fly, maybe on some live shows or anything. So whatever things that you guys have interest in, go throw me questions or Lofty. And yeah, maybe we'll do a live show and just hang out and talk about the game and how at least we see the strategies to do it. But we're not going to pretend to be experts on it because we haven't played it yet. There's no way to know.
Yeah, and it's shaping up to be something where, one, early adopters are going to benefit somewhat, and then two, the way it shapes up, I think the unlimited bankroll people are going to be the ones that are cleaning up, as they say. But that doesn't, think of it, it's going to have the equivalent of overlay for this. You can put together, on the cheap, various teams. Like, I think I need to get like 4 more player cards and I can feel the team. Okay, yes, great. Some of them are like, people are like $10 or whatever. Fine, maybe I'll do that, like $100 on fire, and just see what happens, right? And that's something that I think is worthwhile. That will get squeezed, though, that opportunity will get squeezed out of the first couple of weeks. But in that time, hey, it's like buying a lottery ticket, right? Why not give it a try for that?
So one thing I will say, I have made a lot of money on them so far. It's relative. I've made about the money, once again, that Adam spends in a night at a strip club just by flipping packs and with free airdrops and stuff. So like, there was the most expensive set of packs were $1,500 on DraftKings. But what you could do is I bought some of them for $1,500, and then once they all sold out and there's still demand for them, they're reselling on the secondary market for $1,900. So that was a pretty easy way for me to make some money on them, where it was like, oh, it looks like there's going to be more demand than there is supply for this particular kind of pack. So I just bought a handful of them for $1,500, resold them for $1,900, and profit that way. So there are different ways to make money on it, that beyond just playing fantasy sports.
All right, so back into the baseball. We left off with the Dodgers just play them. Now we're going to a pitching matchup here that is quite impressive. Aaron Nola going into New York, taking on Jacob deGrom and the Mets. We have a 6 implied run total here. This is the same Philadelphia team that we recommended playing all last weekend. They scored 24 runs on Saturday and Sunday combined against the Nationals. Now we're saying take the picture against them. You've got Jacob deGrom, who missed the first 4 months or so of the season. He had a shoulder issue. I believe it was a shoulder impingement, or I forget what it was, but basically it was a sore shoulder that he had to re-strengthen all the muscles around it before he was ready to go. Guess what? He's ready to go. He's had 2 starts, 59 and 76 pitches. He has some ungodly strikeout total. What is it, like 18 or something like that? In his 2 starts, he's lasted a total of 10 innings. He has touched 101 with his fastball a couple different times. His slider is as good as it's ever been, per some of the articles I was reading up on this morning. The only challenge is he is a little bit expensive, to the point that his salary needs another really good game to provide value for it. But he is your cash game pitcher tonight. Nola, I think, is definitely in play as well. We got to give credit to the Mets. They've been a very, very, very good offense this season. So Nola is like a 4th or a 5th option at best. But both these pitchers are in play. I really don't want to talk about the bats. So you're kind of landing on the same spot there, I assume.
Yeah, easy right off the bats. Pitchers, I really like DeGrom in this spot. For starters, he has looked insanely good to this point. I've been speculating. I think the MLB might be juicing the radar guns a little bit this year. It's not that I don't think pitchers are throwing harder, but at the same time too, it's like DeGrom's been elite for a really long time. He's coming off a shoulder injury. Like, was the second pitch he threw this year really 102 miles per hour? Like, is he consistently throwing 101?
I downgraded it to 101 because I didn't believe it either.
To me, it's like, maybe a little bit juice, but that side, he's a 50% K rate so far this year. His last start, he scored like 35 fantasy points, throwing 76 pitches. He's unhittable. He's the best pitcher in baseball right now by leaps and bounds, as long as he's able to stay healthy. And his first start, he was right around 60 pitches. His second start, 76 pitches. So I think we're getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 pitches for him today. Also an important rivalry game here against the Phillies. So I think we're seeing DeGrom fairly close to no restrictions. And unless we hear that he's held to like 80 pitches or something like that today, DeGrom is the guy to pay up for on today's slate for me. And that's even with my guy Corbin Burnes being on the slate. I love Corbin Burnes, but DeGrom's better if I'm being realistic.
All right. Shout out to my wife, who just completed her 50th state for half marathons. She just ran her half marathon for in Fargo, North Dakota. That ticks the box. So hat tip to her. And I wish her well and lots of love, of course. And I will be picking her up at the airport with whatever takeout dinner she would like when she gets home tomorrow afternoon.
So she's done Hawaii and Alaska?
Yes, we did Alaska next, basically baby. A year ago today. We did Alaska, and she did Hawaii before I knew her. So
that's
Puerto
crazy.
Rico next.
Puerto Rico, yeah.
We're going for the territories, Greg. We're going to start a documentary.
Well, no, next will be bike racing, and she'll be in the Tour de France. But so for me, I like maybe equally impressive. She's done all 50 states, EMac. I've done 0 though. So I mean, we've all got different accomplishments that we've been able to work out, but tell her I say congrats. That is pretty cool.
Will do. All right. So the pitchers, definitely the key here in the Philadelphia and Mets game. A little cooler in New York than it has been. It's going to be in the upper 70s during this game. So we're down about 10 or 15 degrees. We do have a couple warm spots here. I believe the roof likely will be open tonight in Houston. It's going to be in the mid 80s during the game. So oftentimes that's when they will open the roof as their evening games there. You've got Zach Loge going against Lance McCullers. This will be the first start for McCullers this year. He had some marginal outings in the minor leagues. He said he was working on shaping his pitches, meaning he was trying different things with control, grips, etc. And that's why his velocity was down and the success was not there. I don't know that I want to buy that in the first start, but he is going against Oakland. I want no part of mediocre lefties going against Houston. For me, it's going to be the Houston Bats and nothing else from this game. What is your lean on this one?
Yeah, so the only thing I'm going to check is how restricted Lance McCullers was in the minor leagues, because
I think he was throwing around 70 pitches, if I remember correct.
All right, yeah, no reason to roster him then. I was going to say if he was throwing like 6-7 innings per start, then he'd be worth considering as a lower owned salary saving option, but appears that's not the case. I have no interest in Lance McCullers. I think the Astros are going to be really cautious with him, especially from this standpoint. He is still a really talented pitcher. And the Astros are locks to make the playoffs and win the division at this point. So just really slowly build up Lance McCullers and have him peaking by the time we get to playoffs. So I think they'll be cautious with him moving forward, definitely in the short term. So no interest in McCullers. I can't stack the A's because they're absolute dog shit. Then we've got Zach Logue on the mound for Oakland. He's also not been great this year. 17% K rate, 5.32 expected ERA. And another one of these teams that goes in the barrel of elite offenses that aren't picking up ownership because everybody's playing the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Astros, the Yankees, the Padres, the Dodgers, these are all really under-owned teams. Basically every team is under-owned other than the Diamondbacks, actually looking at our top stacks tool. But the ones that I want to prioritize are those elite offenses. The Astros, they aren't on the same tier as the Dodgers and Padres for me today, but they're like next tier of offense, projected for 5% ownership. That is a mark that I want to be overweight to. Really good Astros offense against a pretty crappy pitcher in Zach Logue.
All right. I just do want to call out, I pulled up the minor league game logs for McCullers. Oddly, he has not pitched since, I guess it's only 1 week, since August 7th. But he threw 40 pitches on the 22nd and then pitched about once a week, 52, 76, 86 pitches. He was playing for the Sugarland Space Cowboys, but nothing really exciting there and not the best number. So definitely a stay away for there. And we don't even have to worry about talking about a main or an evening slate because there's only 2 late games. Everything else is going off within the first 25 minutes of lock here. So really no reason to do anything other than the Houston hitters. Next game's kind of interesting. We, of course, have, I'm guessing this is going to be the Fox national game, but you've got Frankie Montas going for the Yankees. You've got Cutter Crawford on the other side for the Red Sox. A 9.5 implied run total here, just over 70 degrees in game time, dipping into the upper 60s. So again, it's a lot cooler on the East Coast here than what we've had for the last couple of weeks. I'm sort of leaning to this being a game where if players come into my lineup, I'm okay with it. I really am not that excited about the Red Sox. I'd lean a tiny bit more towards Montas, but it's even a depleted and disastrous Red Sox lineup is still rather dangerous. Anything you want to call out from this game?
Not really. Montas looked pretty rough in his first start with the Yankees. And don't forget, he's still working his way back from injury. He spent a decent amount of time on the injured list, and he was restricted when he first came back. And we haven't really seen him work extended innings yet since then. So that's enough for me to not want to roster Montas today. On the other side, I think Cutter Crawford is probably better than what the general public thinks of him. But at the same time, too, and maybe not, because nobody's rostered in the Yankees, same as yesterday. Only 4% ownership going to the Yankees, went with 8% top stack odds. Put them in the same boat as the Houston Astros in terms of a team that I want to be overweight to, but aren't quite on the Dodgers Padres tier. But I think there are 5 offenses that I'm honing in on, and we've hit on 4 of them now. The Astros, the Padres, the Dodgers, and now the Yankees. These are definite teams that I'm going to be building my lineups around.
All right. Chad is completely and officially off the rails with their topics at this point. All I can say is, Tommy Lee sometimes comes to me for advice. So that's all I got to say. The next game, we've got Milwaukee Brewers, St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis, one of the places where it is a little bit warmer compared to all of the other locations tonight. It's going to be in the mid to upper 80s during the game, except the humidity is down dramatically. You've got Corbin Burns and Adam Wainwright in this one. I would side slightly towards Burns here. I usually don't like taking players against Adam Wainwright. Even in his age 40 season, he is still getting it done, still has a phenomenal curveball, and just it's a headache going against him. It doesn't feel like there's anybody I'd really like to call out from this game other than Corbin Burns. Feels like similar to what I said about the Yankees and Boston. If I get some of these players in my lineup, I'm okay with it, but it's not where I'm going to be targeting things. Your call on this game.
Yeah, so everybody knows I'm a mark for Corbin Burns. I love him, but at the same time, too, it's hard for me to prioritize him when he's popular and we have DeGrom in the same price tier because the matchup against the Cardinals, while they are much better against left-hand pitching than right-hand pitching, they just make a lot of contact and don't strike out a whole bunch. He's also on the road, whereas we're getting guys like Giolito and DeGrom at home. So Corbin Burns, he's not an outright fade, but ultimately I do think I come in underweight to the field on him. He's projected for 21% ownership on DK, right around 10% ownership on FanDuel. There's just other pitchers I like today, and he's the one pitcher that has a pretty substantial price tag on FanDuel at $11,000. So Corbin Burns, I love him, but this is probably going to be one of the rare slates where I don't really get to him. I'm certainly not looking to stack against him with the Cardinals either. And then when it comes to the Brewers, Adam Wainwright this year, he's been serviceable while not being great. And the Brewers are very, very low owned today at 0.6% projected ownership. Not a team I would play in 1, 3, 5, or probably even 20 lineups. If you're playing 150, I think it's pretty easy to get overweight to the field on 0.6% projected ownership for the Brewers. but it's a really, really low priority offense. It's not a team that I expect to have a meaningful amount of because Adam Wainwright, while he's definitely on the decline, he's a 4.3 expected ERA. Most of his starts, it's like, hey, 6 innings, 3 runs for Adam Wainwright, where he doesn't do enough to be serviceable, but neither do the offenses against him. So there's nothing really of priority for me in this matchup.
All right. Our next one, kind of interesting as well. You've got the Texas Rangers hosting the Seattle Mariners. Marco Gonzalez going for Seattle. Texas, actually one of the better teams against lefties this season. They're in the top third of the league. I think we can look to them. Marco Gonzalez, solid, though not spectacular pitcher. Doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. Does allow the occasional home run. So he usually does not implode on the mound, but it is somebody you can go against selectively with players such as Marcus Semien or Adolis Garcia. On the other side, you've got Dane Dunning, who in his own right has been rather serviceable from time to time this year. More often than not, he's been a pretty solid starter, not particularly spectacular from a fantasy standpoint. And the Mariners somehow are the second best team in the league against lefties. They are the 11th best team in the league against righties, and 108 WRC plus. So again, that means they're creating runs 8% more efficiently than the rest of the league against right-handers. These pitchers, unlikely to land in my lineups. I'll probably cap each of them at 5%, but I'd be surprised if I get more than a couple on 150 lineups. But the hitters, I don't mind going with the top 4 of each order here. Another mix and match game. We have some pretty clear pitching choices and some pretty clear offenses, and then the rest are just kind of sprinkle them in. Maybe we get lucky. That's another one of these. Anything in particular for this matchup you would like to
There's a surprising amount of ownership going to the Texas Rangers. I don't think Marco Gonzalez is good, but the Rangers being 5.2% owned, I mean, like, they're more popular than the Yankees today. So they are the 6th most popular offense on the slate. That's a little much for me. So I prefer to not play the Rangers just for ownership reasons. If I had to play one of the offenses in this game, it would be the Mariners. They're only projected for 1% ownership, and we have them with the 8th best top stack odds on the slate. So the Mariners do look a little bit under-owned, but in actual practice, when I'm building my lineups, it doesn't mean I'll get to them. It's a team that, like, based on our projections and simulations, yes, by the numbers are a little bit under-owned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that when I'm actually building out my lineups, I end up getting to them, because I don't think it's going to be necessary. Kind of like when we were talking about some other teams, or some other cheap offenses, like say the Marlins or something like that, where it's like, what do I need for value from them? It's kind of probably what I feel about the Mariners as well, where I might set them to get like 4 or 5% stacks them in Fantasy Cruncher. And then if I run my lineups, they don't show up, I'm not going to force myself to roster them.
All right. This is the perfect encapsulation of Marco Gonzalez. He has allowed home runs in 11. I'm eyeballing it here. 11 games, maybe it's 12 so far. In 3 of them, he has allowed 3 home runs, and in 2 of them, he has allowed 2 home runs. The rest of the time, he doesn't allow home runs. It is pretty crazy here to see that jump out. He does a pretty good job of limiting walks as well. So again, he doesn't really get blown up, but you can do some home run hunting here. So one-offs look to be relatively fine against him. I was surprised to see that. And in 2 of his last 4 starts, he has allowed 3 home runs in each of them. One of them was to Houston. Texas, this will be the 3rd time he has faced them in the last month. A lot of times people like to note that, but the last time he faced them was 2 weeks ago. So there's not quite the recency bias that there once was. Now we're on to kind of the dessert portion of the menu, Greg. Let's start with, we should have just started with this. Coors Field nearing a 12 implied run total. Zach Gallen going against Jose Urena, 6.5 implied run total there for the Diamondbacks. I created a ridiculous 10-leg single game parlay last night that did not come to fruition for this game. I will be doing that again tonight because it's fun and you can create your own GPP. We're going to lean towards the Diamondbacks here, but we should obviously call out some of the Rockies. Take it away.
It's too much ownership on Arizona for me. They are picking up so much ownership that basically every other team on the slate is positively leveraged, because there's so much negative leverage on the Diamondbacks. I mean, this is one of the most negatively leveraged teams we've seen for the entire season on a slate of this size. They're projected for nearly 30% ownership with 18% top stack odds. So They have the highest top stack odds on the slate by a pretty wide margin, but not enough to warrant the ownership. So the way I'm thinking I'm going to be building my lineups right now, unless the ownership changes, is I'll be mixing in a lot of different Diamondbacks players as one-offs in less popular stacks. But I find it really hard to want to back 5-man Diamondback stacks. So here's how to play cash games, at least. Cash games, you make a 5-man Diamondback stack with Lucas Giolito and Jacob deGrom as your pitchers. But that's also what everybody's doing in tournaments today. And if you build that lineup, let's say deGrom scores 35 fantasy points, Giolito scores 25. They're 2 best points per dollar plays on the slate. The Diamondbacks go out, they score 10 runs. You might not even min cash because so many people are going to be on that build. So it's too much ownership for me on Arizona right now. It's clearly on paper the best spot on the slate, which is why I still think you guys should be playing them in cash games. Tournaments, I think it's going to be a little bit too much ownership for me to really want to play them in any significant way as a 5-man stack. And I'm pulling up the FanDuel ownership right now as well. I got logged out of the site as I was trying to swap between sites and look at the data. So let's see. FanDuel, not nearly as bad because they're more expensive. FanDuel, 22% ownership, 18% top stack odds. So I think it's a team to be underweight to the field to on FanDuel, but it's not as problematic as the ownership is on DK, where they're nearly 30% owned. So I'm going to be looking elsewhere with my stacks unless something changes with the ownership. Arizona, like I said, still good for one-offs, but this is a ton of ownership. We're actually doing pretty good on time, EMac. We're really hurrying to get through some of those games. So I'm going to kick this to you and ask, like, how do you approach these situations when a team is so negatively leveraged as a stack? Because this is pretty significant.
So what I will likely do tonight is, and we talked a little bit about this last night. So I do double stacks more often than not. About 2/3 of my lineups are going to be 4-4s or 4-3s, and then the rest are going to be 5-0. I use Fantasy Cruncher. I will set the Diamondbacks to be 5% in each of the 2 stacks, which means we'll get about 10% of them. I will cap each of the individual players at probably around 12%. So I will get a nice distribution of the entire lineup, but not go overly heavy on anyone in particular. I'll do the same for the Rockies as well in this one, but I will want to make sure I have some representation for this, but I want to be going to the other games. I don't want to miss out on the Dodgers. I don't want to miss out on the Padres. Last night, I had a reasonably good night, and my lineups that had the best success were Padres with Baltimore Orioles, right? And I got there because I spread out my mixing and matching of my stacks and ended up with a couple combinations that were able to break free and have a nice evening. So I will be looking to do something similar today, especially with 24 teams in action on this slate. You can easily get, by moving some of your Arizona Diamondback popularity, you can be over on almost every other team if you wanted to. To me, that feels like a better chance than trying to hold hands with the field and outwork them with your secondary stack, or maybe get lucky on one of the 2 pitchers.
Yeah, and that's why when you look at our top stacks tool right now, so the team with the best top stack odds is still the Diamondbacks, but they're way higher owned than what their top stack odds are. And then you move down the board, the Dodgers, higher top stack odds than ownership. Same goes for the Padres, the Yankees, the Astros, the Rockies, the White Sox, the Mariners. You have to get all the way down to the Twins, who have, is it the 8th or 9th top stack odds, to find a team with more ownership than top stack probability. The reason being that just there's so much ownership going to Arizona, and they're so negatively leveraged that every other team, with the exception of like 2 or 3 of them, then also end up being positively leveraged. So I think it's pretty easy to just take the Arizona Diamondbacks as of right now out of my 5-man stack options, and then just be overweight to other spots. And then ultimately what I'm hoping for by the time the slate goes is any other team to be the highest scoring team on the slate, and I'm looking good. If Arizona's the highest scoring team, I'm screwed. But any other team ends up being the highest scoring team, and I'm sitting pretty good with chances for 1% lineups to break through. On the other side of the game, though, I do think the Rockies are going a little bit overlooked. I like Zach Allen. I think he's a good real-life pitcher, but it's a Coors Field game. Anything could happen. And whenever we get the Rockies at really low ownership against non-elite starting pitchers, and Gallen's just a tier below that. He's really good, not quite elite, though. So I still think he is a targetable pitcher. And we're getting the Rockies at only 4% ownership at Coors Field. There's other offenses I prefer, but I do think this is a team worthwhile being in our player pool. Even if you're somebody who plays, the $4 on DK, or you play 20 lineups over on FanDuel. If you're playing 20 lineups, I would still have 1 or 2 Rocky stacks in that mix at the 4% ownership mark.
That sounds like an awful lot of strategy. Hey, this is the MLB Strategy Show, and I've got an offer for you. Use the promo code MLB Strategy Show, all one word. That's MLB Strategy Show, and you get 50% off your first week of any weekly package. Just want to focus on baseball? You can get 50% off baseball. Want to get the whole Bucks Deluxe version, the premium suite? You can use MLB Strategy Show, all one word, and it will take 50% off your 1 week package cost for your first subscription to Awesome or to Stokastic. Sorry. I still am going to call it Awesome.
Yeah,
years from now, it's just going to happen.
It's tough because I mean, like I know I make fun of you for being old, EMac, but I'm old too. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be turning 32 years old. And I've realized there's certain things too, like teams that changed their name since I was in my childhood, they're going to be that former team forever for me. Like it's tough for me. Like I have to force myself to say Guardians sometimes. It's just tough to remember because you become so accustomed to saying a certain name. But I mean, we'll figure it out. But let's slip up.
I cannot spell the word awesome anymore because Awesemo is like so phrased into my brain. It just automatically I type Awesemo if I try to say awesome.
Yeah. Tyler's pretending he used to know how to spell it though.
Yes. Broken clock and Tyler. They're right twice a day. Okay, let's get back to the baseballs. We've got 2 games to go. We'll quickly spin through the early slate. We are getting out of here in, I guess 8 minutes. We're going to be super fast because we're going to clear the way for the NFL preseason live before lock with Matt Gajewski and Neil Orfield. Use the promo code TUA, TUA, to get all the preseason projections for just $5. These games marginal. This is like one of the worst late slates I've seen in a while, and I love to play the late slates and the short slates. You've got Tyler Beatty going against Logan Webb. What this means is if you're not paying attention, you're going to want to go against Tyler Beatty. Guess what? He's only going to go for about 40 or so pitches. That means this is a bullpen game. Both of the lefty relievers are going to be available tonight for Pittsburgh, and as we saw last night, they employed one of them in such a way that it basically ended up getting 2 of the lefties pinch hit for in the San Francisco lineup, including Jacques Peterson, who I said I didn't think he would be one of those that was pinch hit for. But he's going to be at risk. Tommy La Stella is going to be at risk. Lamont Wade is going to be at risk, as is Luis Garcia. So be careful with that one. I would rather just go with mega leverage and choose the Minnesota Twins going against Reed Detmers, or vice versa. A couple of the Angels going against who's pitching, Dylan Bundy, because I want to just play against the massive leverage. This is a 2-game slate. Let the math be in your favor, because if you're going to go against, this is like the Trojan horse. There's bear traps waiting with an active St. Louis or an active San Francisco manager and lefties waiting in the bullpen of a bullpen game. Let's group these 2 together. You can cover anything of note here. I don't see these guys anybody on the main slate.
Yes, we can do them individually. We've got 6 minutes left, so going with the Giants Pirates, and also there's very little of interest for me. So Logan Webb, I guess, is what's most playable from the Giants Pirates game. I've talked about the Giants as a stack. It's a pain in the ass. It's a really good matchup against Tyler Beatty, but the Giants play in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark, and you just get to the point in the game where the starting pitcher comes out in the 4th or 5th inning, and then the pinch hitting starts. So the Giants don't have terrible top stack odds. They have a 4.7 implied team total. That's all well and good, but what does it matter when it's really hard to project players who are likely only going to play for half the game? And they're actually fairly popular too, projected for 6% ownership today. So I'm cool with leaving the Giants stacks out of my player pool. As for Logan Webb as a pitching option, if you're playing 150 lineups and get a couple of shares of him, it's not an issue. He's $9,100 though. He has a good matchup against the Pirates, but there isn't that much strikeout upside for Logan Webb. He has a K rate under 20% this year. So $9,900 over on FanDuel, that's pretty unplayable to me. The $9,100 over on DK, I don't have that much interest. He's safe if he ends in a couple lineups. It's not the end of the world, but certainly isn't a priority for me. So there's nothing I really like from this game. It seems like you're kind of feeling the same way, EMac.
Yeah, nothing. The main slate, I could care less of these. I would rather all those games I was saying, I'll take a little bit of each of them and I don't care. I really care less about these 2 teams or these 4 teams. than I do. I'd rather take a chance on the Yankees or Boston or one of those other offenses rather than any of these. And the pitchers are just, at that point.
Yeah, and then the final game to talk about, the Angels and the Twins. We actually have a surprising amount of ownership going to the Twins, which is crazy. Reed Detmers has pitched really well, particularly since getting called up to the minor leagues. And, earlier in the year, he wasn't bad. He just didn't generate strikeouts. I don't know what the hell they did to him at the minor leagues, but he had a couple bad starts in a row. So the Angels sent him down to AAA to try to work things out. And he pitches this start in the minor leagues where it's like he goes 7 shutout innings with 13 strikeouts. Like, all right, we got to call this guy right back up. And it was like, okay, that's a little weird, right? They sent him down to AAA. He gets 1 start there. They call him back up. And he's been on fire since then. Like he's totally different pitcher than he was earlier in the year. So second half of the season, Reed Detmers, 2.12 FIP, 2.92 xFIP. He's a 34.7% K rate. And we have the Twins projected to be one of the most popular offenses on the slate. I feel like I'm missing something. Like, why are the Twins this popular? They have the 4th most ownership on the slate today. Considering how well Reed Detmers is pitching, that's an easy team for me to write off. In fact, Reed Detmers, I think if you really want to play a chalky Diamondbacks offense, I can make a case for playing a 2% owned Reed Detmers over on DK or on FanDuel. $9,100 is a little steep, but he's 0.5% owned. Considering what the strikeout numbers have looked like as of late, I don't mind him as a large field tournament option. I do think he's going a little bit under owned, and he showed us some good stuff lately. I don't want to roster Dylan Bundy at all, but I can't roster the Angels offense either. The Angels offense has just been so miserable without Mike Trout. Bundy himself also isn't particularly good. So no interest in the Angels, no interest in Bundy either. But I can't play the Twins of their ownership. Reed Detmers, really deep GPP play, I think, with some upside.
All right, quickly on the early slate, go to Toronto. They are going to be Tristan McKenzie. God, if he turns sideways, you literally can't see him. He's like 6'6" and 147 pounds, I swear. But he has issues with same-handed power. So look to the power right-handers. That would be Vladdy Jr., Alejandro Kirk, Teoscar Hernandez, Bo Bichette would be the main ones there. You can also take the Rays against DL Hall in what is likely a bullpen game there. Those would be the 2 offenses I would look at. We are sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm going to do a 2 birds, 1 stone. Some would say 2 girls, 1 cup. I've never seen that video, nor do I have a plan to, but we can go to Odd Shopper, the sister site of Stokastic. We can click on tools, and we can then click on PrizePicks parlay, and it will bring you the best 5 PrizePicks player questions that are available for baseball. So as we can see here, we are looking at 5 different pitchers, 3 different pitchers with the under on strikeouts. You do have the over 3 strikeouts for White going against, why am I blanking on the team name there, against the Guardians, because you subliminally told me I could not remember to say the Guardians. I see what you did there, Greg. But this is an easy way to do stuff. You sign up over there at PrizePicks using the promo code OSMO. Your first deposit, they will match up to $100. You will also get 30 free days of Stokastic premium content by using the promo code OSMO. So check that out. Final thoughts, Greg, as we get out of here. Exactly.
No, we got to leave. Tyler's got to look up how to spell the word awesome again. He's going to be back. Pa, where do you go in awesome? I can't pass me the thesaurus so I can look up how to spell awesome. I knew there's a U in there somewhere. So yeah, we got to get out here. We got the NFL preseason show right after us. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I'm telling you guys, Matt Kajeski, sharpest football guy in the world. He knows everything.
All right. And then remember, live before lock, MMA style, 3 o'clock, Pete the Heat Rogers and third leg Greg. And then we have live before lock, MLB 6 o'clock, that will be featuring T. McBee, who won $30,000 on FanDuel last night. With that, gamers, good luck.
Now, Greg, you know it's the sore eye.